My name is Cassandra, and the night I told my mother I would not give up Harvard for my little sister was the same night my clothes ended up in trash bags by the front door. I thought that was rock bottom, until years later I was standing in an operating room, staring down at her open chest while the monitor screamed a flat, merciless line. Everyone else in that room saw a patient. I saw the woman who had called Harvard, withdrawn my acceptance without telling me, and then watched from the doorway as I dragged my life out of her house in plastic bags. A few hours earlier, she had been in a hospital bed, fingers like claws around my wrist, whispering, "You're a surgeon now. You can save me. You owe me." The same words she'd thrown at me when I was 18. You owe me. You owe this family. Back then, I broke. This time, something in me stayed perfectly, disturbingly calm. In the OR, the alarms spiked, and the anesthesiologist shouted numbers. My attending barked orders. Someone started chest compressions. My mother's heart stuttered on the screen. I leaned close to her ear before they wheeled her fully under the lights and said the sentence I had been rehearsing since the night they chose my sister's comfort over my future. "You need a miracle?" I murmured. "Ask your golden child." 3 weeks earlier, she'd walked into my hospital with a folder of unpaid bills and a diagnosis that should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like déjà vu with a chart attached. "Here's what I want to know. If your parents only loved you when you were useful, were they ever really your parents? Or were you just a long-term investment that didn't pay out the way they expected? If you've ever been treated like the strong one whose dreams are optional, stay with me until the end. Listen to what they did, what I chose, and then tell me in the comments whether you think I went too far, or not nearly far enough." The first time my mother told me I owed her my future, there were no hospital lights, no monitors, no antiseptic smell, just the kitchen table, a thin envelope, and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I was 18, hands shaking as I opened the Harvard letter and read the words out loud. "We are pleased to offer you admission." My voice broke on admission. I laughed, half sobbed, waiting for someone to scream, to hug me, to say they were proud. Instead, my mother's face went still in that particular way that meant a storm was forming. My father rubbed the back of his neck. My little sister stared at the table. "Harvard," I whispered. "I did it. Harvard is expensive," my mother finally said, "and your sister has been struggling. She needs us more than you do." That was the first time the phrase appeared, soft and reasonable. She needs it more. Like my entire life was a pie they could slice up and redistribute. I tried to argue, partial scholarship, loans, work study, anything, but my mother folded her arms. "You're strong," she said. "You'll be fine anywhere." She isn't. "If you really loved your family, you would stay. You owe us that." The words sank in like a needle. You owe us. That night, when I came home from my shift at the diner, the Harvard letter was gone from my desk. I found it crumpled in the kitchen trash, ink smudged from coffee grounds. "What did you do?" I asked, voice thin. My mother didn't flinch. "We called them, told them you won't be attending. You'll go to state, live at home, help your sister. We're not co-signing loans for some fantasy." My father stood behind her, eyes on the floor like the linoleum had become fascinating. My sister hovered on the stairs, lips pressed together. "You can't do that," I whispered, though they already had. "You live under our roof," my mother said. "You eat our food. You don't make selfish decisions without us. Family comes first." I remember staring at the trash bags by the front door, stuffed with my clothes and books, the zipper of my favorite jacket poking out like a small, shiny accusation. "So if I choose Harvard," I said slowly, "I lose my family?" She didn't blink. "If you choose Harvard, don't bother choosing this family." The second time she told me I owed her, years later, she was sitting in a wheelchair in my hospital, a faded cardigan hanging off her shoulders. Stage 3, the oncologist had said privately. Resectable, but complicated. Insurance is a mess. In the consultation room, my mother's hair was thinner, her face sharper, but her eyes were exactly the same. "You'll fix this," she said the moment we were alone. "You'll talk to your people. Get me the best surgeon. Make sure the bills don't ruin us. After everything we did for you, you owe me that much." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. For a moment, I was 18 again, holding a crumpled letter over a trash can. I heard my own voice, younger, pleading. "Did it ever occur to you that maybe I'm not just here to fix everyone else?" Back then, I picked up my trash bags and walked out. Now I stared at her chart, at the tumor on the scan, and realized we were standing at another doorway. Different hallway. Same choice. My future, my boundaries, or her comfort. Only this time, I wasn't the one with everything to lose. For a long time, I told the story this way. I was the good daughter who tried. I tried to compromise, to negotiate, to build bridges. I tried to call, to visit, to fix it. It made me sound noble. Tragic, but noble. But the truth is messier, and I have to own that if I'm going to be honest about what I did next. After they kicked me out, I bounced between couches, cheap rooms, and graveyard shifts. I enrolled at a state university when a scholarship came through, and threw myself into pre-med like it was oxygen. Whenever anyone asked about my parents, I would shrug and say, "We're not close, but I tried." It was easier to be the abandoned hero than the girl who blocked her whole family's numbers one by one during her second semester, because every call came with a side of guilt. In my mind, I remembered myself dialing home, begging them to understand, offering to meet, to talk. In reality, it was my father leaving voicemails I never listened to, and my mother sending long emails that started with "Dear Cassandra" and ended with "You broke this family." I archived most of them without reading. I told myself I was protecting my mental health. Maybe I was. Maybe I was also rewriting history. You know what's sick? I spent years blaming myself, thinking, maybe if I'd been less ambitious, they would have loved me more. But here's the question that keeps me up at night. When did making your family proud become the same thing as making yourself smaller? And why do we only call it love when it asks you to shrink? The worst part is, they hadn't always been like that. When I was 7, I fell off my bike and split my chin on the curb. There was blood everywhere. I remember screaming, sticky hands pressed to my face, and my mom running out of the house barefoot. She didn't panic. She scooped me up, whispered, "You're okay, Cassie. I've got you," and carried me to the car. In the ER, while they stitched my chin, she held my hand and sang my favorite song off-key to distract me. Later, after the bandages and lollipops, she cupped my cheeks and said, "You're so brave. One day, you're going to be a doctor. I can feel it." That was the last time she looked at me like I was more than a task to complete. Rachel was born the next year, small and soft and colicky, and the mom who sang to me in the ER disappeared into someone who only ever saw me as competition for her younger daughter. Whenever I tried to remember my mother as pure villain, that bike memory ruined it. It would sneak in when I was scrubbing in for my first surgery, or when I got my med school acceptance. I would see her, younger, holding my hand under harsh hospital lights, before she learned how to weaponize the phrase, "You're strong." And maybe that's why it hurt so much the day I snuck back into the old house. It was 2 weeks after they kicked me out. I'd been living on a friend's futon, working double shifts, trying not to think about the laptop I'd left behind. The one with all my essays, all my applications, my entire digital life. One Sunday, I knew they'd be at church. I used the spare key they didn't realize I still had, slipped inside, and went straight to my room. It was already half empty. The posters were gone. My desk was cleared, except for a lonely layer of dust. I went to the closet where I kept my laptop bag, hands shaking. "You're not supposed to be here." Her voice came from the doorway. I turned and saw my little sister leaning against the frame, arms crossed, freshly straightened hair falling over her shoulders. "Rach," I whispered. "I just need my laptop, okay? I'll be gone in 5 minutes. Please." She didn't move. "Mom said if you came back I should call the police." She held up her phone like a weapon. "She said you'd try to guilt trip us." "I'm not trying to guilt trip anyone," I said, stepping toward the closet. "I just need my work. Those essays, they're all I have left." "You made your choice," she said, voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. "You picked Harvard over us. Now you have to live with it." "Harvard is gone," I said, feeling my throat close. "You know that." She made sure. "Then you really don't belong here," Rachel replied. Her thumb hovered over the numbers 911. "If you don't leave, I'll call." I stared at her, at the girl I'd tutored through every math test, covered for every missed curfew, lied for when she snuck out. "Do you really think I deserve this?" She didn't look at me when she answered. "You're the one who walked away." I left without the laptop, without my essays, without anything. That was the day I stopped telling myself my sister was just a puppet. She wasn't fragile, she was complicit. Med school gave me new problems, anatomy exams, 80-hour weeks, the constant terror of making a mistake that could cost someone everything. It was brutal, but at least the tests were honest. An exam never said, "You're selfish for wanting this." A professor never asked, "What about your sister?" I learned to live in hospital corridors, to steal naps in call rooms, to drink bad coffee like it was water. The more I built this new life, the easier it was to pretend the old one had just evaporated. Then, on a night shift during my second year, one of the nurses handed me her phone. "Hey, Cassie," she said carefully, "is this you?" It was a GoFundMe link. My father's face filled the thumbnail, lit by the bluish glow of a kitchen light I recognized instantly. He looked older, hair thinner, worry carved into the lines around his mouth. The title read, "Help Us Save Our Wife and Mother." I hit play. He cleared his throat, staring into the camera like it might bite him. "My name is David Miller," he began. "My wife, Linda, was recently diagnosed with cancer. The treatment is expensive. We're drowning in bills. We've always been a hardworking family, but this is more than we can handle." He glanced off camera, then back. "We have 2 daughters," he continued. "Our youngest, Rachel, gave up school to help care for her mom. Our eldest, well, she's a doctor now, but she's chosen not to be involved. We're not here to judge. We're just asking for help." The video cut to a montage of photos. My mother smiling weakly in a hospital gown, Rachel holding her hand, the house in the background with a "for sale" sign on the lawn. The last frame lingered on a family photo from years ago, only my image was gone. Cropped out so neatly you would never know I'd once stood between them, arms slung around their shoulders. I scrolled down to the description. It was worse. "Our eldest daughter is very busy with her successful medical career," my father had written. "We respect her choices, but we cannot rely on her. We're praying for kindness from strangers." The comments section was a war zone. Half were furious on their behalf. How can a doctor daughter refuse to help her own mom? This generation is so selfish. Imagine choosing money over your mother's life. The other half were from people who read between the lines. "Wait, why are you pressuring your kid on the internet? There's a lot you're not saying here." Sometimes kids go no contact for a reason. Then I found Rachel's Instagram. The latest post was a picture of my mother in a headscarf, lying in a hospital bed, fingers twisted in the blanket. The caption read, "Watching the person who gave you everything fight for her life while your own sister, the doctor, refuses to lift a finger. There's no pain like that. Some people choose career over family. I choose my mom." Heart emojis, prayer hands, comments like, "Your sister is trash. You're the real daughter. Stay strong, queen." I sat in the staff lounge, phone in one hand, hospital pager in the other, and felt my chest go tight. They had rewritten the narrative so neatly. I wasn't the kid who'd been thrown out with her clothes in trash bags. I was the cold-hearted doctor who abandoned her sick mother. The villain in their crowdfunding story. And yet, buried among the outrage, there were comments that pierced deeper than any insult. One said, "If your daughter went no contact, something happened. Parents, be honest. Did you ever choose one kid over the other?" Another, under Rachel's post, simply read, "Golden children rarely realize someone else paid for their crown." I watched the view count climb on the GoFundMe. Donations trickled in. $10, $50, a heartfelt $3 with a message. From one daughter of a narcissistic mom to another. "I hope you find peace, whatever that looks like for you." I wasn't sure who she meant, me or my sister. Maybe both. That night, between cases, I opened one of my father's old emails for the first time in years. It was from after I started med school. "We saw your white coat photo," he'd written. "Your mom says she always knew you'd be a doctor. She wishes things were different. Rachel is having a hard time. She feels abandoned. Maybe you could call?" No apology. No acknowledgement of trash bags or revoked Harvard dreams. Just another quiet suggestion that my absence was causing their suffering. It was strange, watching them perform their version of the story online. In their videos, they were tragic, noble, blindsided by my cruelty. In my memories, they were the people who used my strength as an excuse to bleed me dry. Somewhere between those two versions was the ugly truth. I had walked away, and I had stayed away, because staying would have killed me slowly. Here's the part that always surprises people. My mother lived. When strangers hear the story in pieces, Harvard, trash bags, cancer, the line, "Ask your golden child," they assume I let her die on that table. It would make a cleaner revenge tale. She hurt me. I refused to save her. End credits. Real life is messier. The surgery was brutal, but the team did their job. When I checked the board the next morning, her name had moved from OR to ICU, and the word next to it was stable. She survived. That's where my revenge started, not where it ended. Weeks before that surgery, I sat in a tiny office with a billing coordinator going over my mother's chart. Numbers glared back at me. Estimates, deductibles, out-of-network penalties. "There is one thing," the coordinator said gently, pointing at a small box on the screen. "We have a family financial assistance program. If an immediate family member who works here signs off, we can restructure some of the debt. Lower interest, longer terms. It doesn't erase the bill, but it helps." There it was. A simple little checkbox with my name hovering metaphorically over it. One signature from me, and the hospital would treat my mother like a VIP case. The very system I had fought my way into could soften the blow for the woman who had locked me out in the cold. I stared at that box for a full 5 minutes, pen in hand. Every version of me crowded into that room, the 7-year-old with the split chin, the 18-year-old with a Harvard letter in the trash, the exhausted resident who had watched 100 mothers sleep in plastic chairs next to their kids' beds without expecting anything in return. Everyone says, family is family. But what if your family's love came with terms and conditions? What if every "I love you" had an invisible asterisk that said, "Only if you do what we need"? At what point does honoring your parents become just enabling your own abuse? I set the pen down. I can't sign that, I told the coordinator. Why not? If it's about embarrassment, lots of employees. It's not embarrassment, I said. It's a boundary. I left the box unchecked. The day of the surgical planning meeting, I walked into the consultation room knowing she would ask again, in some form. My attending went over the risks and benefits. My mother nodded at all the right times, her eyes flicking more to my face than to the charts. When he left, she grabbed my hand. "You'll be there, right?" she demanded. "You'll make sure nothing goes wrong. You'll make them treat me like family." "You will be treated like every other patient," I said. "That's how this works." "No," she snapped, voice cracking. "You are my daughter. You are a doctor. You will go above and beyond the way we did for you." Memories flashed. The night she called Harvard behind my back, the trash bags, the click of the lock, Rachel's thumb hovering over 911. "Above and beyond?" I repeated. "You mean the way you withdrew my acceptance without telling me? Or the way you told Rachel to call the police if I ever came home?" She flinched. "We were trying to protect this family. You were going to tear it apart." "You tore it apart the day you decided my future was negotiable and her comfort was sacred," I said. "You chose your golden child. Now you're asking the discarded one to fix it." "You owe me," she whispered. And there it was again. That phrase, worn smooth with use. "I carried you. I raised you. I fed you. I gave up so much for you." "And I spent 20 years paying that bill," I replied. "I think the account is closed." After the surgery, after she lived, after the ventilator came out, and she started complaining about the food even with tubes still taped to her arms, the bills began to arrive. My father called me, voice shaking. "We're drowning," he said. "They keep sending notices. Your mother thought you'd help." "There's a program," I said. "The hospital mentioned it. An employee family assistance thing. Did they tell you I refused to sign?" Silence hummed on the line. Finally, he said, "She told us you couldn't. That it would get you in trouble." "It wouldn't," I said flatly. "I chose not to." "Why?" he asked, and the way he said it, bewildered, genuinely confused, made something in me go cold. "Dad," I said quietly, "when Mom threw my clothes into trash bags and told me if I chose Harvard I was no longer family, did you think about whether that would get me in trouble? When Rachel threatened to call the police on me for walking into my own room, did you stop her?" His breath hitched. "That was a long time ago." "Not long enough," I said. "You want to know why I didn't sign?" "Because for once I decided to believe you. You told me I wasn't family. I'm just respecting the contract." I could hear him choking up. "Your mom is suffering," he said. "She cries every day about the bills." "I cried for years," I replied. "At least she has a house to cry in. For now." I hung up and sat in my car in the parking garage, shaking, not from guilt, but from the weight of finally letting her feel what I had felt that night with the trash bags. 6 months after the surgery, the house was gone. I didn't need a GoFundMe update to know. The for sale sign in the background of their videos disappeared, replaced by a bland apartment hallway in Rachel's posts. No more photos of the old front porch, no more garden, just gray walls and budget blinds. One evening, between cases, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized but hadn't saved. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, I swiped. "Hello? It's me," Rachel said. Her voice sounded older, raspier, like she hadn't slept in months. "I'm at Mom's new place. She's not great." "I read the updates," I said. "I'm sure this is hard." "We lost the house," she blurted. "I dropped out to work full-time. Mom can't handle more than a few hours a week. Dad's exhausted. You got what you wanted." There was no venom in her tone, just bone-deep exhaustion. For a second, empathy warred with the memory of her thumb hovering over 911. I could have said, "I'm sorry. Nah." I could have told her I hadn't wanted any of this, but that would have been a lie. "You know what's funny?" I said instead. "When I was 18 and sleeping on a friend's couch because your mother threw me out, nobody asked if you were happy with my suffering. Nobody lost sleep over my future. Now that you're the one sacrificing for her, suddenly it's a tragedy." "I was just a kid back then," she protested weakly. "So was I said. "But you picked up that phone anyway." Silence stretched thin between us. Then she said, "I found something." "What?" "Mom's old diary, from before I was born, before all of this." She hesitated. "You should see it." I almost laughed. "Why? So I can read about how hard it was to raise an ungrateful future surgeon?" "No," Rachel said quietly. "So you can see what she did before you came along, and why she hated your white coat so much." That hooked me in a way no guilt ever could. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between the hospital and my mother's cramped apartment. When I arrived, Rachel was already there, hunched over a worn notebook. She looked different. No perfectly filtered makeup, no soft aesthetic lighting, just dark circles under her eyes and a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there when she was the cushioned younger child. She slid the diary across the table. "Page 50, she said. "Just read." The entry was written in my mother's looping, impatient handwriting. "Got written up at the hospital again," it began. "They're saying I messed up the dosage, but the doctor signed off too. Why is it always the nurses who get blamed? If they fire me over this, I swear, this place doesn't deserve me." A few pages later, "They fired me. They said I endangered a patient. That doctor threw me under the bus. I gave years of my life to that place. Now what? David says we'll manage. He doesn't get it. I was supposed to be someone. I was supposed to wear the white coat one day, not fetch things for people who do." The entries grew darker. Bitterness hardened into something jagged. "Saw a med student today," one read. "Stupid little girl walking around like she owns the ward because she can answer a few questions. I could have done that, if I'd had the chances she has. If I hadn't gotten pregnant." Later, during her pregnancy with me, "Doctor said the baby's strong, maybe too strong. Sick of being tired. Sick of this body betraying me. If this kid doesn't amount to something, what was the point of all this?" I closed the diary, stomach twisting. "She wanted to be a doctor," I said slowly. "She wanted everything I have." Rachel nodded. "There's more," she said. "After you got your Harvard letter, she wrote about it. 'Cassie got into Harvard,'" she quoted. "Of course she did. She got everything I didn't. If she leaves, what will I have left? Just Rachel, who can't even get through a semester without falling apart. Maybe it's better if Cassie stays local. Maybe that's what's best for the family. She owes us." The word "owes" was underlined 3 times. I leaned back, the cafe buzzing around us, and realized something horrible. My mother hadn't just been protecting Rachel. She had been protecting herself from the mirror of my success. My white coat, my acceptance letters, my surgical badges. They were all billboards advertising her own failures. "She wasn't sacrificing for us," I said. "She was jealous." Rachel picked at the cardboard sleeve of her cup. "She used to tell me stories about the hospital," she admitted. "About how the doctors were arrogant and careless, how she could have done their jobs better if someone had given her the chance." She looked up. "When you got into Harvard, she didn't say she was proud. She said, 'Don't get cocky. You're not better than me.' I thought she was just being strict." "She was terrified," I said, "that I'd become what she always wanted to be, and leave her behind." A few nights later, my father called. For once, he didn't sound like he was trying to smooth things over. He sounded wrecked, I read the diary, he said, without preamble. Rachel showed me. I knew she was angry about the hospital, but I didn't know how deep it went. You didn't want to know, I said. There's a difference. He sighed. A raw, broken sound. I should have stopped her that night, he whispered. When she threw your stuff into those bags, I stood there and watched, and told myself it was between you two. But it wasn't. I was your father. I should have chosen you too. I closed my eyes. For years, I had fantasized about hearing those words. I thought they would feel like balm. Instead, they felt like someone pressing on an old bruise. Can I fix this? He asked. Can we fix this? You can start, I said slowly, by asking yourself why you only cared when it became convenient. When the bills piled up, when the house disappeared, when Mom's jealousy finally cost you something. He didn't argue. That hurt more than if he'd yelled. For the first time, he wasn't telling me to be the bigger person. He was admitting that the bigger person had always just meant the quieter casualty. A year after my mother's surgery, I stood on a stage under soft lights, a plaque in my hand, applause washing over me like static. The hospital was giving me an award for outstanding dedication and ethical practice in surgical care. Somewhere in the audience, people who had never once asked about my family history smiled like they knew me. The MC had just finished telling a sanitized version of my journey. First-generation college student, state school, med school, residency, the whole bootstrap fairy tale. They didn't mention Harvard. They didn't mention trash bags. They certainly didn't mention the fact that my mother had been one of the most difficult cases I'd ever walked away from. Not clinically, but morally. I scanned the crowd out of habit, eyes skimming over faces, and froze when I saw her. Not my mother. Rachel. She sat 3 rows from the back, no camera out, no curated expression. Just tired eyes locked on mine. We hadn't spoken much since the diary. A few tentative texts, a couple of neutral updates. The door between us was cracked, not open. Seeing her there, in this space that had become wholly mine, felt like someone had shoved my 2 worlds into the same room and locked the door. After the ceremony, people drifted away in clusters. I slipped down a side hallway to my office, plaque under my arm like a shield. On the wall above my desk hung 2 framed documents. The first was my med school acceptance letter. The second was a piece of paper I had dug out of the trash years ago. My original Harvard acceptance, creased and coffee-stained, the one my mother had thrown away. I'd carried it in my wallet through state school, through every exam, a talisman of the life I'd almost had. A few months earlier, a third frame had joined them, a handwritten letter from my mother, sent after the surgery. Cassie, it began, I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong to make you choose. We are losing everything. If you could help us just this once, I promise. I stopped reading it, I promise. I didn't believe her. Instead, I smoothed the paper, put it in a frame, and hung it next to the Harvard letter. A matched set. The opportunity she'd tried to erase, and the apology she'd only offered when she needed something. When colleagues asked about the letters, I told them the truth. That one is my Harvard acceptance, I'd say. My mom threw it away. This one is the letter where she asked me to bail her out after the surgery. I framed them both to remind myself what it costs to ignore patterns. Some looked uncomfortable. One attending frowned and said, That's harsh, isn't it? I'd smiled. You know what's harsh? I answered. Being 18 and watching your mother choose your sister's comfort over your entire future. What I'm doing isn't harsh. It's just equal. That day, as I set the new plaque on my desk, there was a soft knock on the door. Come in, I said. Rachel stepped inside, eyes flicking to the wall. She took in the letters, the diploma, the photos of me with colleagues instead of family, my new chosen tribe. You really framed them, she said. No judgment, just quiet observation. I did, I replied. It helps me remember what actually happened, not the version she tells when she wants sympathy. Rachel swallowed. She still tells people you abandoned us, she said. That you let the bills crush us because you're heartless. And what do you think? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she crossed to the wall and studied the Harvard letter. I used to think you were dramatic, she admitted. Like, okay, mom is intense, but all moms are. I thought you left because you wanted to be special. I didn't realize she called Harvard. I didn't realize she told Dad you'd be fine anywhere because you were built for suffering. That's literally what she wrote in one of those diary entries. I can't unsee that now. She turned to face me. After the surgery, when you refused to sign that form, I hated you for months. I thought, how can she sleep at night? Then I started working double shifts, seeing the bills, listening to Mom say, Rachel will fix it. Rachel will stay. Rachel owes me. And I realized she wasn't asking me to love her. She was asking me to live the life she'd already decided for me, the one she tried to force on you first. We stood there in the quiet buzz of the fluorescent light. People keep asking if I regret it, I said finally. If I feel guilty for letting her struggle, for not making it easier, for standing in a hospital full of power and choosing not to use it for my own mother. I looked at the letters, at Rachel, at the reflection of my white coat in the glass. But here's what nobody ever asks. Did she feel guilty when I was 18, homeless and alone? Did she feel guilty when she told you to call the cops on me in my own house, when she cropped me out of those family photos? I met my sister's eyes. Why is the child always expected to be the bigger person? Why do we call it moving on when they want to forget, but holding a grudge when we refuse to pretend it never happened? Rachel's eyes shimmered. She didn't apologize. I didn't ask her to. Some debts are too old to collect. Instead, she said, I don't know if what you did was right. I don't know if I could have done it, but I get it now. At least a little. She glanced back at the wall one last time. Congratulations on the award, she added softly. You earned it, with or without us. Then she left, closing the door behind her. I stood there alone, surrounded by evidence of every version of myself I had been. The kid my mother once dreamed would be a doctor. The teenager she threw out. The resident who refused to sign a box. Here's the part where I'm supposed to give you a clean moral. To tell you I forgave her, or that I burned every bridge and never looked back. The truth sits somewhere in the uneasy middle. I answer her medical questions when they come through my father. I do not sign the forms. I send Rachel job postings sometimes. I do not visit on holidays. Revenge, for me, wasn't slamming the door. It was refusing to play the role of sacrificial daughter ever again. It was letting my mother live long enough to feel the consequences of the choices she'd made without me cushioning the impact. People keep asking if I regret it. If I lie awake at night wondering whether I should have done more. Sometimes I do lie awake, but not for the reasons they think. I'm not haunted by what I failed to give her. I'm haunted by how long it took me to stop giving. So I'll leave you with this. If the people who broke you showed up years later begging you to save them, what would you do? Would you bleed for them one more time, just so everyone could say you were a good child? Or would you finally choose yourself, knowing the world might call you heartless for refusing to be their hero ever again?